What time were we supposed to start?
4:30.
Oh, good. You're amazing.
So we're good. Get this out of here.
I feel like I was monopolizing.
What is it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. George, is that over your pen? I might not give it back because it's probably not mine. Oh, no, this isn't mine.
So take it anyway.
So talk to Olga, there's the other person that wanted to come, and she's out on medical for the next several weeks. I don't know if she'll be coming back. So we have a dilemma. We've been trying to bring class management to you. We still have another classroom management doing identical next week in Golden Valley at Sarah View Elementary.
Is that Madera?
It's in Madera County, yeah. Golden Valley is out by the ranchos.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If we moved and consolidated, would you guys still come? Or is it,
What day of the week is
it'll
it?
still be a Monday? Or 4:30?
Monday at 4:30 in Madera?
And at Sarah
Ranchos.
View. That's another thought we could do, is bring it into Madera, since we do that at our conference room. In Madera.
I can make it wherever in Madera.
You can drive 20 minutes or 30 minutes. How do you feel about that?
I gotta talk to you. I don't know.
Because you have to get out early, you want to do that. What time do you get out?
Monday is 4:30.
You get out at 4:30. You'd only need, what, 8 more times?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had people that came late from
It
Ocean
should
Mountain.
be half hour late
Oh,
every time. If she left at 4:30, it'd be almost 5 o'clock, especially with traffic.
Yeah.
we could keep it the way it is, and you just don't have to,
Well, he might be able to do that.
you don't have to make the trip every time. My time is the same either way, so.
All right.
That was supposed to be on the thing when we came in, so. Have you guys seen this poem? I don't need to read it to you. I mean, there's a lot of, obviously, controversy on both sides of this, but I think so many of our kids fall into that category.
Uh-huh.
You know, we talked about they go home and they oftentimes are cooking dinner and making sure their brothers and sisters get to bed.
Babysitting, or they'll miss the whole day.
Right.
Yeah, because little brother's sick and mom can't miss work, or, yeah.
All right, so we have practice again. Have you guys used it?
Yeah.
Did it work?
Yeah.
It worked. Did you use it?
Just maybe like once or twice. They're just one kid, but she doesn't care. But I did try it. He just looked back at me like the same way, and I was like, "This is a stare off." So eventually, I just had to look back and like.
Who blinks first?
Yeah.
And did I make you guys do the turn?
No, we didn't do the turn
I
yet.
didn't do the turn. Okay.
Neither group, we just did the
All right,
stare.
so I need you guys to stand up.
You're doing it this time, I did it last time.
And I'm going to model it for you the right way. I'm going to show you the wrong way, and then we'll practice it.
Or I'll be Larry.
So there you go.
Larry was
Larry's always causing problems. So let's imagine that I'm helping a student. And we're actually going to bend over. We're going to help a student. And I hear a disturbance.
Disturb.
And so I take a breath, a calming breath. I check my jaw. I say, "Excuse me, Mary." And then I slowly turn towards Larry. And I'm real careful with my hands, and I don't give him any other body language. All I want him to see is no reaction. But he knows that there's not something good going on here, right? So the idea is I'm not conveying I'm upset. I'm not conveying maybe he did something funny. I'm not laughing. I'm just, Queen Victoria, I am not amused, right? So I'm helping Mary, and I hear Larry make a distraction, and I quickly get up and I cross my arms. What does it communicate when I move quickly and I cross my arms? Irritated. Now, I can even do it with some tube.
You're not pulling that out very
Or
well.
my dad, he would do this. All of that is saying, I'm irritated. Cognitive coaching calls it beamers. It's our body language that gives off what we're thinking. And even in a counseling situation or cognitive coaching, we're supposed to be in tune to beamers to see where people are going. But our students use the same feedback. And if they can tell that I'm getting irritated, they keep going. Right? That was what you're talking about, your one student that's sitting in the back. It's irritating you, but he knows how to push all the right buttons. And they don't think about it cognitively. I want to see if I can take this teacher off today. Well, maybe. I don't know.
No, this one probably does.
Most of them, even in our elementary, our third grade students, they're not thinking, what can I do to make the teacher mad? But it becomes entertainment for them when they can get under the skin of the teacher. And as we talked about last time, our fight-flight reflex kicks in and our brain shuts down, and now the whole class has control of our brain, right? So we're trying to remain calm, and we're also trying to project calmness. Emotions are contagious. Emotions are contagious. So let's imagine that you had a disagreement last night with your significant other, or your mom, or somebody close to you. Right? You ever argue with somebody? And you're still chewing on it the next day?
Yeah.
Or the boss just called you in and they give you the informal observation notes and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired, and the anxiety goes way up and you're feeling it. You bring that into the class. And the way you're feeling is contagious. Here's an example. Have you ever had an admin walk in and it made you nervous? Didn't make the rest of the class on it.
Who?
Admin walks in.
Oh.
You get nervous. The kids react to that, right? Right before lunch, or right after lunch, but before your class started, there was a fight right outside your door. Does that carry into the classroom?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Something about a holiday, especially we're going through October where there's no days off. Now, in my district, we actually had a planning day today, and we have another one next Monday. So we have students, and only half of my staff came to work today, and next week they all come, but there's no students. So there's kind of some Mondays in there. But otherwise, October's a hard month, right? We have to go all the way to the middle of November. November 10th, I think, is Veterans Day. And then a week later, we finally get Thanksgiving. But that's 6 weeks before we get a day off. Kids feel it, you feel it, you're at a point. By the way, I'll show you that way. There is data, national data, that says that we're way up here excited in July, and we get to about October, and we're in this disillusionment stage of, why in hell did I become a teacher? This is a hard job.
What was I thinking?
And we don't really climb
What
out
else
of
could
it.
I do?
We don't start to climb out of it until we get back to April, right? And everyone feels that. And then we get to July again, we're anticipatory, it's going to be a great year. All right. All that to say, our emotions are contagious. You know, October's kind of a tough month. The honeymoon's over, right? You've seen student behavior, and now they're finding out where the boundaries are. So they're pushing, 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 and if you're not firm now, oh boy. So how do we do this? So we're helping Mary, so I want you to turn around, put your hand on the desk, and so you're backside to me. I know it seems rude, but I want your back to me, and I'm going to be your disturbance. So your hand's on the desk because you're helping Mary. So put your hand on the desk, or a chair, whatever you want to do. You're kind of bent over a little bit, and you hear Larry making a ruckus. You say, take a calming breath, breathe in, breathe out. Check your jaw, the tongue goes to the roof of your mouth. You say, excuse me, Mary. And then you take about 7 seconds to slowly turn towards me. And you put your hands either here or behind your back. And you're not amused. Now I'm going to try to make you smile. You ready? That was easy. All right. You're helping Larry again. You're helping, you're helping Mary. Larry makes a disturbance. Take a breath. breathe in, you breathe out. You check your jaw. You say, excuse me, Mary. You say, excuse me, Mary.
Jordan.
You slowly turn to the disturbance. I got hurt. You want to get good?
It did get hurt.
That's, oh, look at that.
She's still not cracking up.
Right?
Hey, I've been here, done that, I'm old. 18 years, you learn.
But if you can do it here in the classroom, right, with us, where we're being goofy, you can certainly do it tomorrow. That was really good. I was proud of you. All right, now go ahead and have a seat. We're going to try one more thing.
This is a very nice pen, thank you.
Okay. So now you're in a group and you're working, and I need you to get to work. And so I've given you a look, and the look's not working. So now I'm going to move in. Now, do I move slow or quick?
Slow.
Why?
Depends. You don't want to get all defensive on you.
Okay, as part of it, I'm also revealing something if I'm walking quickly, and probably what?
Frustration.
Probably agitated. So I'm going to walk in, and I want you to get to work. So I'm going to come and invade your personal space, and I'm going to say what you need. Why is that important?
You want to put on blast?
Well, but you're right, so I'm not going to announce to the class that I want her to, but why did I make her put her feet into the table? It gives a full buy-in, right? So Fred Jones at Tools for Teaching says that we walked over, and students still sitting like this, and they're kind of writing. What kind of a commitment are they giving you? Say that louder.
50-50.
He calls it giving you a half a loaf, but you're exactly right. So if I make them move, now I'm getting their body physically committed and ready to work. Okay? Now I'm getting a body. And they're probably not going to be happy about that, right? What would a student say if I made them move their feet into the table, especially a seventh grader?
Say or
I might get some back talk. What do I do with that back talk?
Ignore it.
I ignore it. Does that mean I don't deal with it?
No.
It's just stay out of class. Right? And we'll talk about that.
or while you're leaning over, say that to them.
Right? But if I address it in front of everybody, I'm just...
Ooh, you're in trouble.
But no laughs, like you said.
Okay, so I'm going to move in. I'm going to move in slowly. And let's imagine that we're not getting any work. I'm going to put a palm on the table. I'm going to wait for some work. And she might be giving me all kinds of back talk. But being in your personal space is uncomfortable, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So if I do this to you, how does it feel? Like, why are you here? What are you doing?
Sure.
And I might even want to give a nonverbal cue. What happens if I start talking?
Full-blown conversation.
Then we're gonna, it's actually the teacher's escalating it, isn't it? We don't even realize it, we're making a reinforcement error. We're giving that student that wanted that negative attention, we're giving that negative attention, they're thriving on it, they're escalating, and eventually I've had enough. And what do? I blow my top, go to the office and call security or whatever the procedure is, right, to get them out of the class. What did that student do? They just won. Remember we talked about how expensive it is to dismiss a student out of the classroom. They're sitting with the admin assistant, they're not learning. They go and see the vice principal who was just dealing with a pot issue in the bathroom, right, something real serious. And now they have a student that's being defiant. What are they going to do? Give a little talk, don't do that again. If I see you again here, I might call your mom, go back to class. 40 minutes after setting the student out of class, they're back in your classroom. And what are they saying? Principal didn't do nothing. You can't do nothing to me.
Yeah.
And now there's a worse problem than before. And how do you feel about your administration when that happens?
Feels like they don't have your back.
They didn't support me.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to handle as much as we possibly can in our own classroom.
Plus you give up control the minute you let them go.
Right? We're abdicating our authority to the admin, so now we can only control the student if the admin's in my room. Right? And they're not afraid of admin because the admin said, don't do it again, go back to class. All kind of problems. So we're trying to get them, so again, what we talked about last time was we're 60% of the way there just by our physical presence and by giving them the look. Now we're 70% there by moving in. This is still not going to solve all of our classroom issues, okay? But look at what happens in this room and how it's different than when we were here last time. So last time we were here, there were 38 desks in a row. You couldn't even walk the back of the room. So I told you there were 3 zones of approximation. Remember the 3 colors? Traffic light.
Yeah, right.
So red meant the students weren't going to do anything because they knew you were too close, you were going to catch it. Yellow meant, I don't know if she's paying attention to me or not, I might push it. Green is, I'm sitting in the back, she doesn't even know what I'm doing, I'm looking at the phone, I'm playing footsie with the girl in front of me, I'm putting stuff in somebody's hair, I'm taking a pair of scissors and cutting somebody's hair, right?
Oh, I totally solved that
All
one.
of that.
I take everybody in the back, I make everybody stand, the ones in the back have to go to the front, and everybody else moves
Ah. Well, we do talk about, especially when we start talking about groups, of using data to really decide who sits where, right? So it's not my birthday, it's not my last name, it's by, you're an EL student and you're bilingual. You can help each other. You're a high reader, you're a medium reader, you're a low reader, we're gonna put you 3 together to work on something together. But this room now has the ability to flip those colors in just a few steps. So I can still teach the class, and now I'm visiting with this group. And I only have to be here for a few seconds, and then I'm over here dealing with this group. And then I'm over here dealing with this group. Do you have a clicker for your slide deck? Right? Or a slate, or an iPad, or whatever. And then I'm back over here, and I've just walked the entire room. We know that California Standards for the Teaching Professionals, CSTPs, #1, is engaging and supporting all students in learning. Here's one of the habits we know. Teachers tend to stay here, right? And they walk the room, and this is their walk. This is it. Am I giving those students in the back the same amount of attention and engagement as I am giving these 4 or 6 students over in front? All I do is walk in here. And why am I walking here? I'm tied to my laptop, or I'm tied to my computer. Do you spend a lot of time over here, Jordan?
No, I can't sit still very long, so.
Do you have to be here to operate the computer? Or
No, yeah, I mean, you set up the first 10, 15 minutes, I get everything set up, and then I just kind of like follow around.
So we're walking around.
Yeah.
And then we're flipping those zones of approximation all the time, right? And then when we're really addressing a student, put your feet into the desk. Put your feet into the desk so we get a full commitment of what's going on. Now we're 70% there because we have our high expectations. This is the behavior we have in our class. Somebody outbursts, oh, in Chowchilla we don't do that. I don't know where you're from. Are you from Chowchilla? Oh, you should know better. In Chowchilla at high school, we don't behave like this. At Wilson, we don't do this. Reagan, where are you from? Fairmead. At Fairmead, way out in the country, we don't behave like that. That's just not the way we do things. Here's my expectations, right? And then get to know your expectations. Jenny tells the story of when I had to go to Grandma's house over here, I know we got to do chores and I got to vacuum. When Grandma's over here, we get ice cream and cake and we can flop on the couch and eat in front of the TV. When I go home, oh no, we never eat in front of the TV. There's different expectations at these 3 houses, and I know what they are even as a 7-year-old. Even as a 2nd, even as a sophomore. We have different standards even at the high school, right? What does a tardy mean? For some, walking through the doors and before the bell rings, I'm on time. For others, I'm sitting at my desk, my notebook's out, and I have a pen in my hand. If I don't have that, teacher's marking me tardy. We have different expectations. Your students can adapt to those expectations and meet it. So we're again challenging you for those high expectations. Last thing, I'm almost done. One of the things that we've been talking about is that it's respect before being liked. Our students have to respect us before they like us. If we go for they need to like me before they respect me, we may have kids that love us and a chaos in our classroom. But what I love to hear is when students say, oh no, you never mess around in Miss Blevitt's classroom. Oh heck no, she didn't put up with it. But then they also loved it. Especially closer to January, February, March, when they started to see I'm learning stuff in this classroom. I feel safe in this classroom because she doesn't allow others to pick on me. She doesn't allow others to mess around. They don't take my backpack. They don't mess with my stuff. Because you don't mess around in Miss Blevin's classroom. Respect, and then like. Sometimes the new teachers, we get that backwards. We want to be the cool teacher and everyone like us. And it backfires, right? All right, so I'm not amused. I'm going to remain calm. Even if inside I'm boiling mad, I'm never going to allow a student to know that. I will say this, even if you're having a bad day outside of the classroom, it can never, ever, ever come inside the classroom, right? And you're going to have some horrific days ahead. That's just part of being human. Whether it's somebody you love that's sick, or I went through a divorce, right? Actually, I found my refuge was the classroom. I had to start thinking about all the things that are going on at home. But we can bring that in. I've had teachers in trouble because they're trying to talk to their attorney, or they're trying to talk to their ex-spouse about who's picking up Johnny after school today, right? And they're on their phone, and admin walks in, and they're in tears or whatever. All that has to stay outside. So we're going to remain calm. We're going to move slower rather than quicker. We're going to learn how to move in, put our palms down, and Fred Jones even says to go another foot. I don't know if we can do this anymore. Even to go down to elbows, face to face. You need a tic tac, Steve. All right.
Oh, he did Larry practice.
All right, so this you?
My children.
TMI.
I know, sorry. It didn't bother them. So, I know a lot of this is old hat, right? Culturally relevant classroom. I mean, we were supposed to cater to, well, not cater, we're supposed to make sure it all is equal, right? And that every one of our students is included. They're treated with dignity. Understanding who our kids are makes that a little bit easier, right? We don't know which ones of our students, sometimes we don't know where their parents are from. Sometimes it's fairly obvious. Sometimes we don't know what the composition of their family is, whether it's 2 moms, 1 mom, grandma's raising them. I raised 2 of my nieces. Well, there was 2 of us that raised my nieces, and we were female, so that was interesting at a school up in the mountains. So it's important to know who your kids are to make sure that you're inclusive and right, recognize that. And so I just like this graphic, but centering and valuing your students in your classroom. Normal. Using rigorous and relevant curriculum and anti-oppressive teaching practices. I made the comment to Steve right before that, oh yeah, that's kind of a given, right? We raise the bar and we just expect all our kids to step up to that. But that's not always true. Like, I thought back to some staff meetings where I was in a meeting and they would say, well, that child has fun with their parents. Like, they're not gonna go to college. And being an avid teacher, I was like, well, wait a minute, I have kids that could go to college, and they did, and now they're lawyers. Or I've had kids that I knew, I'm like, oh, they couldn't qualify for UCs, right? I mean, knowing early on what kind of school UC is, I was like, they won't probably make it. But I realized that I can't tell them that, right? I can't even allude to that. I can't even let them think that, because I don't want them to think that I don't have high expectations. And that's hard sometimes, especially if the kids, I had a kid who, he was I'm not sure what program he was in, but after I think I spoke about him last time, but he had every alphabet after his name, like every disorder possible known to man. He had horrible hygiene because his family was not clean. Like one time he took his shoes off, we were on one of our senior trips, and his nails had not been cut, and he didn't bring a bathing suit, and here we are staying at like the Sheraton, and we're at the pool, and Well, I got him into Avid because he was kind of squirrely in the class because he was almost what in the old days we would have called an idiot savant. He was that smart, and but socially was not functioning very well. And we got him into Avid, and thankfully those children identified what his strengths were and kind of, you know, included him with that. But we went to this one trip, and we're at the Sheraton or the Radisson, whatever we were at. The kids are going to go in the pool, and Brian didn't bring anything. And one of his friends, I don't know how he did it because I would have been freaked out, but one of his friends loaned him one of their pairs of shorts so that he could swim with them. And I thought that is kinder than I think I could have been. But Brian got to participate, he got to be, you know, and his mom sat in an IEP with me. I had him for 2 years, so 4 IEPs. And she said, he won't go away. He can't even get into college. I'm like, not even the JC? And she's like, no. He said, I think he can. And he wanted to be an engineer. And I'm like, I think he can. Oh no, he can't. Well, he got into Cal Poly School of Engineering. Yeah. That said, socially he only lasted a semester. But he got that experience. And it showed his mom that he can do this. The hard part of that is he is home and he's like a volunteer docent kind of deal. I mean, he's not doing great things. He did go to JC for 2 years. But the fact that he could do it, you know, I think was a decisive thing in that. But, so we have to check ourselves sometimes. And that's hard because we've done this, like you and I have done this long enough that we kind of know. And it's hard for us not to say, yeah, that's not going to happen. But and then when we say that without in our head, I always worry that I'm showing it on the outside. Like, I don't mean for me to, but I think sometimes that happens. Building strong relationships, we talked about that. You know, that is a huge thing because then you get to know the kid. And not just the demos, not the stuff we know in the records, not the stuff that we know, what have you, but the stuff that, the nuances of this child and what makes them tick, what they're into, what they're interested in. I had a kid, I was out at the West Campus, and the gang campus was East Campus. And when we had graduations, we were still having them outside. And what would happen is the reds would be on one end and the blues would be on the other, like on opposite ends of the football field. And I had this kid in my class, and one day I'm walking through, and he had his head down, and I said, you know, again, not wanting to call him out because God forbid you make any attention. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, no response other than that, right? No words, nothing. Didn't hear anything from this kid for probably months. And then one day, he closes my door, and it's just him and I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm about to get beat up. And he says, Miss T, I heard what you were saying to so-and-so about your truck. Do you have good insurance? I go, yeah, I have good insurance. Do you want me to take care of it for you? I can take it out to Kearney. I'll have it taken care of. You'll get the insurance money. And I was like, I go, no, I'm good. I want to keep my credential. Thank you so much. But you know, that was his way of carrying it in his world. That was his way. And then about a month later, he brought me this stack of car wash tickets because he worked for a car wash. But this is the kid, he somehow disappeared, right? All of a sudden, one semester, he's not there. And at graduation, I saw him. And without even thinking, I'm like, oh my God, Felipe, or whatever his name was. And I go walking right in the middle of all these kids, and I go to hug him, and one of his friends said, you know, who the F is this? And he goes, it's cool, it's Miss T, it's okay. And I thought, what was I doing? Like, I was just gonna go in there with my little happy ass and walk right up and say hi to this kid in the middle of all these bulldogs. And it was interesting though, because somehow, in some very minuscule way, that child trusted me for whatever reason. And it was all because that one day I made eye contact with him, really. And I think positive relationships, sometimes it takes a lot, and sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot at all. Anyway, you know most of that stuff. So this might get a little uncomfortable. We're going to talk about ways that have led to our biases, and I'm going to share my experience. I grew up in Georgia. I grew up in southern Georgia, deep south, right? Bible Belt, and then hometown. I was born in the Bay Area and moved to the south when I was 10. So I had the Bay Area upbringing, and then I had this small town Georgia upbringing. Never knowing what our hometown was about. We didn't know that. Until we were much later, and we were in the Bay Area riding BART, and my sister and I were reading the paper over this one guy's shoulder. And it was saying how bad our hometown was. And we were like, oh my God, like we had no idea. I realized that my stereotyping, not of the black-white issue, of the farmer or the slow drawl, right? All of those things, my preconceived, and I would never have thought I would think that, because I had a southern drawl, but I didn't have that southern drawl. And how I automatically think, oh, that person doesn't have a brain in their head. And it's not true. Some of the smartest people I know have very heavy southern accents, but that's my bias. If somebody came in and had a certain southern accent from a certain place, I would immediately, in my head, have to check myself, because I automatically think they're not smart. And also the religion thing. Growing up in the Bible Belt, half of my family was Church of God. If you're not familiar, Pentecostal, praise the Lord, holy rollers, and my grandfather was a preacher. So I struggled a lot, but if I saw somebody walk in with, hair not cut, and it's all the way down to here, and it's up in a bun, and they don't wear jewelry, I immediately think, oh, Pentecostal. And then I have my own ideas of what I think about that. So, that said, I'm going to ask you to step into whatever makes you uncomfortable. You don't have to share any of this. In fact, I'm asking you not to. But just consider and think about these questions. So, everyone has biases. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's not recognizing them that makes us leads us to bad decisions in life and in our classroom. Notice the citation. Before we venture into this, what's the difference between equality and equity? Anyone? Anyone?
Equity is fairness, isn't it? And equality is treating everyone the same, but I don't necessarily think that they're compatible, like exact. Am I close?
You're very close.
Go for it, Jordan. Big words.
I can't, that's the example I was gonna think about too. Yes.
So what you were saying is this is fair, right? We're making sure every child can see over the fence, and that one is everybody has the same size step stool, but it's not. So I think that's a really cool, there's a lot of them, but I think this is probably the best one. This is where we're going to dive into this, is what are we making things equitable for every child in our class? So here's the first one. How equitable are your class discussions? And how do you ensure that all voices are heard? Do you have a policy that you randomly pull, like tongue depressors out and you randomly pull on kids? Or, because I know when I didn't do that, or if I was walking in with something that had happened earlier in the day, sometimes I would drill certain kids because I knew I was pissed off. And if that kid ticked me off that day, I would sometimes find myself either intentionally ignoring them or intentionally asking them questions. And I'd have to realize that I was not in a position at that point. I needed to be more fair and like, uh-oh.
Did you push the wrong button?
I don't think so, I didn't push anything.
Still going on.
Jordan, did you pay the bill?
No. Hey, it's like at my house.
I wonder if it timed out.
Even if we're clicking?
Well, it's not really reading an input, it's more like it's playing a video. Or,
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
This has been informational, definitely.
Thanks for staying, Melissa.
I just wanna watch Jordan squirm, because it makes me happy. Are we not supposed to be that way?
No, I think we are, especially with the newbies.
Oh, no, she's not necessarily.
That's right, you're not
a
new,
newbie.
you're coming up on 4 years, right?
Yeah. Jordan, how come you had all this food? I'm glad you didn't tell me. Because then I would have been sad.
Well, it was old, so I just threw it away.
Okay, Chicky, I'll see you in See you in Milan. Did you get that? What, are you doing more paper?
Oh, that's for the floor. I need to give it back to Liz.
Liz bought all that?
Uh-huh.
Liz is so
That's a
crazy.
lot.
We did
That's like $100
last
worth
week.
of
Oh.
paper.
And I did the senior class book, and so that's why this looks like this. All this is.
Oh, yeah.
We did
You
hours.
did the senior flip?
Uh-huh. Oh, God.
You what?
Uh-huh. This is my
Oh,
third
yeah.
year doing it.
You know-
3 years in a row we won.
You are like who I used to be when I had whatever you want to call it.
We get all into it. My mom helps me and everything, and so we go all out. So this is the third year I've done it. I've won all 3 years, and so I'm just like on a roll now. And my mom gets involved. her
There
friend
you are.
gets involved,
Yay.
and we
Oh,
always
that's
put it all
cool.
together.
Are you keeping the clicker? Oh, no.
Bye, kids.
Bye.
So the next one, how do you make sure your personal beliefs towards other cultures and communities does not permeate your classroom? I think what's interesting too is while we're thinking about ourselves, is thinking about some of our colleagues that we know, like, this does not make them comfortable at all, right? If they had to answer these questions.
do you guys look at that at all? Do you look at your lesson plans with student knowledge and background and culture in mind?
Or is it mainly standards?
It's more like background knowledge.
Your lesson plans are, you kind of gear them towards your clientele?
I mean, we go by standard, but yeah, we still have to gear it towards everyone. Everyone learns differently, so we have to try to, I'd say, like I have kids learn that I have to make like accommodations for and stuff like that, so it's really just like tailoring it to everyone, so.
I think that's easier for me because my class is small, so I can take it. I mean, I have 8 kids in my chemistry class. I know the standard that they're doing in gen ed. I know that my kids, that would be extremely way over their head. And so I take every lesson and I'm just like, okay, what are we trying to teach them? And then I just make it way more like interesting for them. Because I have 8 kids that I know how they all kind of learn. And it's all pretty similar. And so I do focus on the standard because it always what the main goal is, and I want them to feel like they're doing if they talk to their friends in general, I don't want them to feel like they're doing something different, which they are, but if they were to talk about it where it's close enough that they would be like, oh yeah, we did that last week, but it's still different than what
Sure.
they're doing.
The way you're delivering it is
I just don't
perhaps
want them to
different.
ever, that's why I try to line up with them, because I'm like, I don't want them to feel like if their friends are, well, you're doing that in science, why are you doing that? It's for kids, you know, like I want it to be like what they're doing, but just a lot more simple for the kids in my class.
How many ELs do you have in your class?
Mhm.
20?
I think I have like
5
5 or
ELs?
6 ELs.
Do you think about that when you're doing your lesson plan?
Yeah, I have one newcomer.
Oh my.
So he went to 4 last year. I think that was like the first year. And it's really kind of hard because it's like, I don't know how much he's understanding. And then also too, it's like, he writes in Spanish. So for me, it's like very hard because like, I mean, he goes to reading lab. he has an SST, so like I'm on board with talking to people and like what can I do to further help him and stuff like that. So I have that, but yeah, I have like 6, I believe, but with one.
So what's the racial demographic of your classroom?
Like my brain's done.
So you have 25 kids?
I am a mainstreamer, so technically I have 30.
30.
Yeah.
All right, how many of them are Spanish?
Like maybe half my class.
Okay, so 15. Do you have any other race, or is it half and half?
African American, I do have some Asian, or I think.
Southeast Asia, or Chinese, Japanese, or Pacific Islander?
It's a good question. I
Filipino?
don't know. I think maybe Filipino, like mixed, very, so, yeah.
Jordan, you have the same 8 kids all day, or you have periods?
I have different periods. So like my biology class, I have 10 kids. My chemistry class, I have 9. My transition skills, I have 10. And my English class, I have about 10. So I have about 10 each, but they're all different kids. So I have about 40 different students throughout the day for special ed, and then I teach credit recovery, which is none of my kids, and there's like 30 something of them. So I see about 70 different kids throughout the day.
So how do we leverage native language in the classroom? Do you use some of the Spanish words? Do you try at all, or are you afraid?
From the directives that I got was to not, was to do as much like in English as possible, like no.
So it doesn't support the data.
Yeah. And I've asked for like assistance, like, how do I, because I want to help them learn. I want them to fully understand what I'm, trying to get across. But from my understanding was, because I even asked, I said, I don't speak the language, but, what if I do this, or what if I, like I have my coach come in, and I know that she can probably speak it and give them like simple directions and stuff like that, but it's just.
Okay, well, the data doesn't support that.
Yeah.
That old model anymore of English-only learning. What they're finding is that when students learn in Spanish and translate it, that the learning is deeper and more permanent, and that students actually do better on assessments.
Which makes sense, because they're getting the knowledge, and the language will come around.
The language does come. So, but some of the things that we can leverage are you just trying Spanish, because then the kids will do what you. But what you're saying is this is a safe space to experiment. It's a safe place to try. And so even if you're throwing out a couple of words, I mean, you got a couple, right?
Gracias.
A little bit.
De nada.
Bien, it's good.
Very little.
Right?
But it's scary as a new teacher to then go against what admin said.
We siéntate, right?
I think what I've found though is,
That's
because I
good.
mean, I don't obviously know hardly any Spanish at all, just not at all. But I know that what I do with them is the basic stuff that, I mean, pretty much all of us, they're like gracias or whatever. I also find just relating to them, they enjoy that you're trying their language.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And they are so like, because my friend that I work with, she is actually a bilingual aide here, which is actually nice because I get to know her students that she works with, and sometimes I have them in my class, and some of them don't speak any English, but the fact that I go to them and I'll get on my phone and I'll translate, I'll say something, they're just in awe that this, white teacher that speaks nothing is willing to try their
Willing
language.
to try.
And they're like, oh my gosh, this. And I remember this is 2 years ago, all of her students, I could not speak to a single one of them. But they would all come in my room because I would try and they would try, so we would both have just broken English and Spanish. And we were all best friends. We never actually probably had a conversation, but we just had like the good vibes of we liked each other. And they actually threw me a party for my birthday. I never talked to them. And it was because I opened an environment of like,
Yeah.
I don't speak your language and you don't speak mine, but like we high five
Yeah,
and we
halfway.
smile and we say, you know, and they loved that. And she was actually the one that taught me that. And so now, working with her and working with her students, I'm like, that's all they want you to do is just give them, like, make them feel like, hey, you're not gonna laugh at me and I won't laugh at you, let's like try. And we never talked to each other, but
Yeah.
it was cool.
That's
what the data supports.
interesting.
The other thought is how do we get culturally relative texts in front of our students? Whether it's looking at different authors, particularly in ELA classes, or
Books in the
whatever
your
supplementary
library.
materials are you pulling, or does it relate to their culture, their background, their interests? You were talking about how do I make chemistry interesting to the students. So I'm looking at the standards saying, okay, I'm going to pull this because I know kids will be interested in what happens if you mix ammonia and vinegar together, right? So it's like, not good. Let's put bleach and ammonia together, see what happens. Okay, no, maybe not. But these are cleaning supplies that everyone has in their own house, right? It doesn't matter if their parents are working at the UC Merced or we're cleaning UC Merced. We all have these cleaning products in our house. Why are they dangerous? What is it? What is the compound? What happens when? And what is it reaction? Oh, here's a vocabulary word. This is a thermal reaction or whatever. And let's put that on the board. And now we know that if we mix bleach with ammonia, we're gonna cause a deadly gas. Oh, there's another word right there. Or heat, it's gonna release heat, or whatever. So now we're tying into their interests. And it's more than just talking about SpongeBob and SquarePants in our literature, or whatever it is that the kids are watching today, because I don't even know. How do we tie in to their culture?
Well, and just how do we, you know, I don't know, you guys probably aren't provided with books for your library, are you? Like your library, your class library?
Yeah, we're provided, we just, I mean, a lot of it is like what I brought, and then they just recently brought us like nonfiction books, so like different kinds, so.
So there's,
variety.
you think there's, does it match what you have in your classroom, clientele-wise, student-wise? Or does it look like somebody ordered, oh, this one has Asian, like an Asian main character?
Not, honestly, not necessarily. Like, we have our class novel that we're reading is like called Year of the Dog, and so it's talking about like Chinese Americans and stuff like that. I mean, they're being receptive to it, they like it. But yeah, I think with our curriculum, there's not a lot of books that do like have like different authors that, you know, are different cultures or whatever. So I feel like if we kind of have that, they'd be able to relate a little bit more.
And are you given any freedom or autonomy in picking any of this stuff?
No,
Or is it all told
it's
you
whatever's in our curriculum that we have to read as a whole class.
That's it.
You
Yeah.
can't add?
It's kind of like whatever, like.
There's an expectation.
Yeah, so there's not, like, in their book clubs, I mean, they're able to choose from, but it's like, kind of like, we have like whatever multitude of books we have in our book room to choose from based on their reading level, so that's what really hits hard too.
So we talked about decorating your room last time. How does the posters or things in your room reflect the culture of your students? Like I know, so we got a picture, I forget what her name is.
Oh.
Frida
Famous-
Kahlo?
Yeah, there you go. Famous author from Mexico, right?
Yes,
So-
artist.
Well, I said author, artist. Are there other things that we can pull in that would help students feel like this is a safe place, this is my home away from home? Is there a way to add to your ambiance
I feel
that's
like-
culturally sensitive?
Yeah, I feel like the pictures and stuff like that, but definitely because I feel like my students, like, when they, I don't know, it's like when they see different people, you know, that may be same culture as them or anything else like that, that would help them because they would feel like then, like, oh, like, they wrote a book, or this is a famous person that created something, and like, I could possibly do that. And
So, real personal question, we are recording, but you don't have to answer. But as a person of color growing up in a classroom, did you feel assimilated or did you feel isolated? Or did you even think about that?
I think I haven't thought about that. I'm adopted, so, I don't know, I never.
So you were in a home that was mixed race?
Predominantly, my mom and dad are Caucasian, so predominantly, and then the rest of my siblings are Caucasian. I have a sister that's half and half, so we're not all related, but it's still,
Okay.
yeah.
And so you never felt any of that growing up when you went to school? It was totally natural to see a white teacher in front of you and you feel comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what, is there anything else that pertains to culture? I mean, it's not always just ethnicity and race, right? I mean, there's other, like, what about, I mean, as this child with CP, cerebral palsy, if you put them into a class all of a sudden, how would those kids react? Because with CP, it's very obvious, right? They
Yeah.
usually, and how familiar and how open are kids to who would see that? Or to a child who identifies as trans, how are we being, I mean, and nowadays you've got to be very careful, right?
Yeah.
But what you can do is not shun them with your words, right? I mean, you're not going to want to, I don't think at this point want to put up a poster of somebody who is, a successful trans woman, man, but we don't have to be condemning either, and
Yeah.
the students will hear that in our voice. I mean, it's not our place to condemn,
Yeah.
so.
I kind of had a parent that asked me about that during open house. It was like, based on like curriculum, are you guys gonna be talking about, that kind of stuff? And I was just like, and I kind of just was like, no, like, they're still kids, and in my head I'm thinking too, if they learn that, at home, I feel like, okay, cool, like I don't discriminate, like I don't know, it's like, I'm very much open. Like, when I was in school, I had a lot of kids that were in special day, or they had disabilities, and I just was like, oh, they're still a kid, they're still a
Sure.
kid. So I feel like I take that from my own experience of like, really, like I was going to recess time, I was going into like their class to hang out with them and stuff like that. And so I feel like when I have like a mainstreamer come in, I'm really welcome to them wanting to come in and be with us. I don't try to discriminate. So
I know as a kid, I had a hole in my heart, and so I was in children's hospitals a whole lot. And for some reason, the cardiac floor was the same as the CP floor. And as a child, it terrified me, because I didn't understand what was happening with them. And it terrified me up until I was at a JC, and we had to do a project on something, and I think it was special ed. And I chose CP because I wanted to understand. Like, I wanted to understand why I was so scared and what was going on about that. And, it broke my heart when I realized that the brain is there and they're just as smart as anyone. Their body just doesn't cooperate. And so, of course, then that made me feel horrible, because as a child, I would panic if I saw somebody. I didn't run the other way or anything, but I was clearly terrified. And I realized that was my shortcoming. And my mom never bothered to explain it to me, but I don't think she knew. And so when you've got that, I would say in my family, a cycle of ignorance, it made me shun somebody who had CP. I mean, I even worked at a place in the mall, and this guy came in who had CP, and I could tell in his eyes he understood what I was saying, and that kind of gave me an inclination to what was going on. But until I actually did it and went to Orange County had this huge school hospital program for CP, and so I got to go spend a day there and, you know, put that bias in a sense to rest. But, you know, we're dealing with all types of kids, you know, and all types of backgrounds and upbringings, and, you know, and it's hard right now being a teacher and having somebody straight up ask you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, it's not our job to judge, right?
Yeah.
It's not our job to treat them any differently or to tell them how they have to believe or be. Our job is simply to love them, right? And give them a safe place to fall. And it doesn't have to be our personal beliefs, it doesn't have to be any of that. The reality is, when they come in through our door, they're our kids. And it's our job to love them. And I mean, I had a principal one time tell this young man who was coming out, I found out about later, that he really just needed to pray about it, and I about lost it. I'm like, that is not your place. You know, this is a school, it's a public school. If you want to talk to him that way, then you can go be a principal at a Christian school. This is not okay. And, you know, he about fell apart at that point. And he and I are great friends. But, you know, he was invoking his personal beliefs on this child. And the child didn't come to him and ask for anything. I mean, it was, he pulled him in. And so, anyway, just understanding that, you know, you might have a kid who comes in who worships Satan, right? I mean, I had a kid one time who asked if he could talk to me individually, and I was like, yeah, he was a mom kid. And I was like, yeah. And he started telling me how upset he was about his parents, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? Not expecting the conversation to go this way at all. And he said, well, my parents are both heroin addicts. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what's your concern? Like, in my head, I'm like, don't show any emotion.
Yeah.
Just. And he said, my dad is the shaman. When we were in Laos or Cambodia, whichever country they came from, my dad was the shaman, and this is what they do. And my parents had just not gotten off of it. And I was like, oh boy, like, where do you go with that? Like, our counselors aren't trained for that either. I mean, what do you do? And I guess, you know, again, just a soft place to land. I can't judge them, although I don't understand any of that, right? And I just had to be like, okay, well, and deal with him and his feeling and his, 'cause it's not my place.
I feel like I had a student just on Friday at the homecoming game, a situation where it was similar, like you were not expecting that. Like, I was like, oh, how was it? And you were expecting to be like, it was great, it was so much fun. And she was saying, because she was actually on the GSA Gay Straight Alliance float, and she was like, well, they call me some slur towards gay people, and I was like, I was expecting your response to be, you know?
Yeah.
And my face was just emotional. It's like, well, I'm really sorry. She's like, and they wouldn't take my candy, and I'm like, I'll take your candy. Like, I didn't know how to respond. I'm like, if you have candy, I'll take it. Like, because I'm like, you don't expect that, but then you don't need any of my opinion, positive or negative. Right. Just, hey, I'm sorry, like, but if you have candy, I'll take it. You know, like, because I don't want her to feel a certain way, but you don't expect their responses. I think they just want somebody to hear them.
Yeah,
like, whatever
just
it is, they just
validate.
want to be, like, they don't need positive or negative response to what they're telling. They just want to be heard. Like, this happened to me, and I'm so sorry, but I don't need to give you an
Just
opinion
validate
after
that you hear them.
I hear what you said, but you don't have to hear what either way. I mean, I didn't give her any opinion. Just, you know, kind of like played it off. Like, well, are you good? Yeah. Okay. You don't have any more candy for me? Okay. Well, you know.
Are you sure?
And so
I need some more candy.
And she was fine, and she was great, and she went on and was like, okay, it was good talking to you. And I'm like, I didn't really say much, but that was enough
But
for
she
her.
knew you cared.
Yeah.
Just by just hearing
listening,
her.
just hearing what she said.
Right.
Without
And
even telling her.
I think a lot of kids are afraid to share, and you know, at this point in time, I think hearing some of that is scary, because then you don't want parents to perceive you as being one way or the other, right? I mean, so all you can say is, these are my children, I love them, I'm a safe place to fall, you know, and that's it. I'm not here to sway, I'm not here to impose my beliefs. And, I mean, that's all you can do, you know? And it would be hard for me to be a teacher now, because I'm very brash, and if somebody questioned me, I would be very brash. But you're not tenured, number one. And number two, the reality is it's scary, so just love them.
So why would it be, as we're talking about classroom management, why is a culturally relevant classroom important for classroom management?
It's a good segue to that question. No, what you said, your question.
Why bring this up? Why do we even use this as a topic? Why, how does it affect classroom management?
I think it's kind of like understanding your kids and kind of like almost, I feel like almost where you come from, because it's, I don't know, how do I put this, like,
You have fifth and sixth grade and
very, yeah.
so they're kind of aware of their surroundings and kind of getting an understanding of the world.
Yeah.
Why is it important for us to know where we came from? You said you were adopted. Do you ever research that? Do you ever think about what my family was like 2, 3, 4 generations back? Do you just play off of your adopted parents and check out their family and their culture? How does that work?
I'm like both, like, so I have like a relationship with my dad, I've met my mom, and
Your biological mom.
biological mom and dad, yeah. I think it's like I have a better relationship with my biological dad because he actually tries and calls and stuff like that. My biological mom doesn't try, so I guess I guess for me, a lot of it was like where I come from was like when I went to the doctor and they're like, okay, what's your family history? And I'm like,
Oh,
I don't know. So, you know, that was the hard part, was like, well, I don't know if cancer runs in the family. I don't know if, you know, this runs in the family. Like, so I think,
that'd be hard.
yeah, it was. I mean, answering all those questions, we were just like, I don't know how to answer that, so.
Rono starts with me.
So around my dinner, my family table, in the car or whatever, especially my dad, my mom not so much, but my dad would often talk about being Irish. What does that mean, right? And some of it was good, some of it was humorous, and later on in life, I traced my family back to his great-grandfather. My great-great-grandfather actually came from Ireland after the potato famine. Kind of figured that out. But now, all of a sudden, when you're doing history, the potato famine is very interesting, right? I have other sides of my family that were here pre-colonial America. They were here in the 1700s, where, if you remember the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Well, no, where did they come from? So they came from England. Why did they come from England? So what was going on historically that persuaded my relatives to take a very risky trip on a ship that took 3 months to sail over the Atlantic, to land in a place that there were no cities, there wasn't a university to go to, you were a farmer, you're coming over here to farm, and hopefully, why? So when those history lessons came up, I was more interested, right?
Yeah.
How does that play for our students when we're looking at a 50% Hispanic population? Why are you here? Were you one of the Hispanic population that had been here before California was a state? Did your relatives have a land grant? Was it taken away from them? Were they mistreated? Were they part of the Spanish missions, or did they come later? And why did they come later? And what's going on economically in your home country that persuaded your parents to walk across a desert, through a river, and over the woods, past grandma's house to get here? So they're interested in that, right? So now, in 5th grade?
Yes.
A lot of world history in 5th grade, right? 4th grade's California history, 5th grade's more of that early, real early world history.
No, did you ever wonder, like, how your family, your bio family, ended up here? Because that's what you're getting at is, I mean, I took a group of kids to New York, and we went to Statue of Liberty, and we went to Ellis Island, and I'm of course like, oh, this is so cool. And my black kids were like, Miss T, we're just gonna hang out up here on the grass, and I'm like, you guys don't want to go in in and see where your family's from? And they just all looked at me, and I went, oh, holy hell. Like, never occurred to me, right? I mean, totally innocent. But it's like not everybody came through Ellis Island, you know, and like it blew me away that how, like that was an insensitive comment, and I didn't even realize I had done it until they looked at me and said something.
Yeah.
So part of what we're talking about is engagement, right? And when we get closer to a student's background, their engagement goes up. What happens when engagement goes up and classroom management issues go down, right? Because they're interested in what you're doing and what you were talking about with chemistry or biology. How many heartbeats does your heart have in a lifetime? How many have you used?
What happens if your heart stops?
Right?
And a bunch of them are like, well, my grandpa had a heart attack. And
Right, so the stories come out. The other thought is we often look at students and see the deficits instead of the assets. So we say, Juan doesn't speak very much English. Oh, he'll never go to college because he can't read.
oh, that comes up.
Mary comes from a foster care situation. She's got a terrible home. Billy's mom and dad divorced last week. Larry's mom and dad went to jail, right? We look at these as deficits. Well, these kids aren't doing it. Their parents don't care about their education. The system doesn't care about their education. We just need to grind through and get it done. What happens when we think of kids that way is we lower our expectations academically for those students. I'm a little put off by what she was saying. These kids will never, I'm just trying to get them through, right? That
So I think we were all kind of like,
that was a bad message, right? I wish that she had stayed because I would have addressed it bluntly, but our expectations ought to be any student is a learner. We just all learn at different paces, right? We're capable of learning, we just need to figure that out. And when we look at students as deficits instead of assets, we lower our expectations for them. We're not doing them any favor. So that's why it's important to look at who they are so that we can meet their needs and then raise their expectations, but also who we are so that we can raise engagement. When we raise engagement, classroom management issues decrease. I was thinking of that student Winston, whatever his name is. Well, you got an interest in something, I bet he's a jewel to have in class.
well, you even threw some stuff out there about, oh no, he was fine with me. Oh, well, I gave him a fist. And you were pretty much shot down every time you said something. And you're gonna have those teachers, right? The ones that think, like, I would be willing to bet that if you asked her how many of these kids would be college educated.
She said none already.
Yeah.
She's already determined their fate for them by choosing, you're not going to college, so I'm not gonna give you college materials.
I mean, all I can
And
do is
that's
give you
what I
life
think
skills.
would be frustrating for me when because I have these conversations with her sometimes about that particular kid or these other ones. I mean, even when he's spitting or even when I'm giving him things, there are times that I'm like, I wish he would stop. But,
Yeah.
but I also know that he's a really nice kid. She doesn't get that side of him, but I'm like, how are you approaching him? Because
Yeah.
I think when you approach him correctly, he's always very respectful when he comes in. Every day he leaves, he goes, bye, Miss Lassiter, I hope you have a good day. And I'm like, I don't get anything that she's getting. But I also give him some leeway, like, he could
You respect him though.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm like, I could see him going, he could go I could see him in a trade school and be very successful. He doesn't do anything in the classroom half the time, but I don't think that's gonna hold him back from later on in life.
Right.
Like, he's gonna be very successful, he's extremely good with what he can do. He just doesn't like to read. I mean,
Time
every
to teach talks
15-year-old.
about that, learning and discerning what behaviors I'm willing to put up with, because it's not distracting, even though I find it annoying. None of the other students are even noticing.
That's exactly what she's,
Yeah, 'cause
when
they
she
were
said
in-
that, that's very much a time to teach thing.
Yeah, and he's just like spitting around, but these kids are so used to him being like that I've even gotten used to it, that I'm like, I don't even realize that he's doing anything, but it's completely keeping him.
Right, and so with the
What he
fidget
needs
toys,
to do.
and then the fidget toys are a good example of the equity before equality. Not everybody's getting one, that's
Right.
equality. But equity keeps this kid in line, so the 9 other kids can continue learning. He's learning orally, now we gotta figure out how.
Because the other kids,
Get it out
like,
into the
she was
hand.
like, you don't give one to everyone, I'm like, nobody else asks.
Yeah.
Like, he only just needs it because he's over there doing something. But if they wanted one, they would, but nobody
Sure.
asks. I think he
Sure.
just.
That's
So, I
the
mean-
thing, is it's not meant to be a privilege.
Yeah, it's just like
It's
if you
a
need
tool.
it, because he asked me today and I was like, here. And the kids aren't like, I want one. I'm like, he just plays with it because they don't need it. So I think they just kind of did that themselves. I don't know. I don't have an issue with that. The fidget toy, I mean, I know with him, I do it. I'm sitting here this whole
Yeah.
time we're in this meeting.
I'm constantly
I'm
doing
literally
something.
having my papers already drawn and just sitting there. So I understand him too, I think helps, is being understanding how they're feeling.
And you're gonna run into that at your whole career, you know? Like, there's always gonna be that teacher that says, the kid can't do this, or that child will never be anything better than, or, you know, the gangbanger quote, which of course I'm stereotyping again, but the kid that I walked into the middle of the Bulldogs, I mean, he's probably an electrician or a plumber, I mean, again, making more money than probably I'll ever make. And, you know, but had I written him off, and a lot of people did write him off, he was in continuation, but they're still children, they're still our children, and it isn't our job to make sure that we love them, right? We might be the only person, you might be the only person today that was kind to him.
And she's walking into that, whatever period she has every day, she's already,
Anticipate.
that her anxiety is already up because so-and-so's here today. And you're like, my anxiety goes down because I know I'm making a difference with this kid's life, I'm getting something out of it. Now
She heard
just-
us, though.
Yeah, now if we can, now you're gonna build his expectations up. You've been doing all this orally, you know what, I know you're getting a little bit of writing out of you, now I get a little more. You told me that he's writing notes and he's doing some equations, and so you're getting productivity out of it.
And you know, even say one day, hey, can we talk for a minute? And then pick his brain a little bit, throw that teaser out there about, hey, would you like a different spinner? Maybe if you did, 4 sentences instead of 3, or
Yeah.
baby steps. I was thinking with you as well, when you're doing history, let's say, and we're talking about history and backgrounds, and you said you had some African-American kids in there. What if they say, well, what's my history? Where does mine come from? You know, we were brought over here as slaves. And say, yeah, but we had history before that, didn't we? Like, why don't we start asking around? Why don't we start trying to find what your history was way back when? And I mean, wouldn't that put a fire under their butt to like, oh, I don't know, like, am I from, you know, this part of Africa, that part of Africa was, you know, maybe my great-great-great-grandmother was a tribal queen, tribal chief. I mean.
Or maybe you're Jamaican, man.
Yeah, or Jamaican, right? I mean, you just don't, or aristocracy, which of course would be amazing because that's not the understanding, right, by most of the European whites, is that anybody coming over from Africa could possibly be, you know, aristocracy or royalty, or, you know, or the fact that, you know, women were the ruling power in so many African nations.
Oh, see, that's where they got it all backwards. I was kidding.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, so this paper that I've given you, you're gonna do the 5 circles. I meant to have a paper for you with it, but do you need a pen? And the question is, who are you? So basically, what makes you who you are? And here's an example. I'm an educator. I'm a parent. I've recently become an artist. Not a very good one, but an artist. And I used to have avid teacher up there, and I was a student for a long time. What makes you and contributes to who you are as you are right now?
Do we write these?
Yeah, you write them on your. Steve, I bet I could do those 5 for you.
I don't know who I am. Contemplating my whole life. Who am I?
I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that. Athlete, writer, reader, chef, runner. That would never be on mine, but.
Not me going home with an identity crisis.
I don't know who I am.
Not meant to create an identity crisis. Did you get them all?
I only have 4.
You got 4? Okay, we can go with 4. So if you look at your 4, figure what is your least, out of those 4, the least contributing. And whatever it is, draw a circle around it. Another tough question, I know. I have the worst, like, bubbles coming up. Okay, now look at the one that is the most, contributes most to who you are. Like the absolute, without it, you wouldn't be who you are. And cross it out. Just put a big fat cross in the middle of it. Big X.
I don't know.
This is draw, that's a what?
The one that
is the most, contributes the most to who you are. So how did you, what was your initial reaction when I said to cross that out? Was it like, this is gonna be a piece of cake, or was it kind of a, oh my gosh, like, first of all, I don't know which one I would cross out, is what I saw with both of you. But what was the immediate, was it something that was comfortable?
No.
I mean, even coming up with the 5, you guys struggled because I think you were like, oh my God, what makes me me?
Yeah.
But getting rid of them, so, you know, I have these 3. If you took any of those things away from me, they take away who I am, right? So when we're talking about culture and who our kids are, you know, whether it's they're Hispanic, you know, they're Black, they're European, their parents are from Holland, whatever, you know, they have 2 moms, they identify as gay, they identify as trans, whatever it is, that's who they are. At least in that moment in time, that's how they identify. Will they identify later? They may never claim that they're, you know, their European ancestry for whatever reason they wouldn't, I don't know. They may never claim that they're adopted. Some kids don't want to claim that they're adopted. You know, it's different things, but at that point in time, if that's how they identify, it is our job to recognize that. I was in a conference, this is where this came from, I was in a conference with teachers, and it was a tolerance session, and this one had a bunch of us. And they had us do this thing, and so we're all writing them down. Took us a while too, right? And so we're sitting there, and then he says, cross out, completely cross out the one that most contributes most to you are. And you could hear the group go, oh, like it was a, and we were just like, and he's like, don't say to someone, hey, you know, even though you're black, I still like you. Or it's as bad as saying, oh, it's okay, I still like you even though you're gay. Right? And you're like, well, why does that make me any less? It doesn't make me any less. It's who I am. You know, my history. I mean, I also was in this country long before 1700s. And we were actually on the Mayflower. So, is that cool? Sure. But let me own the fact that there was a lot of damage done by my people too, right? I mean, particularly the early group that wiped out the Indians. But so you've got a child here maybe who is told that he's Hispanic, but he could be an Aztec, he could be Mayan, he might have amazing history. We need to allow them, instead of seeing the movie, what was that movie where the guy is so brutal? It was a Mel Gibson movie. But it portrayed the Aztecs as being absolutely vicious and horrible. Well, that's not all they are, right? So if we have a child that identifies as that, we need to embrace that with him and go, hey, or her, that's awesome. You know, do you know what that means? Do you know what that embraces? So our job is to make sure that we don't chip at that foundation, but rather we help build them up. And I share a story. I had a kid in my class that would always say she was going to Tranquility, somewhere like that. And I tease her. Thankfully, she was one of my advocates, so I had her for 4 years. But I'd always tease her, oh, San Joaquin. She's like, Miss Taylor, I'm going to San Joaquin this weekend. I'm like, oh, San Joaquin, huh, fun. I go, what are you going to say hi to the 2 people that live there? And I mean, I had jokes. Then I did that activity. And I just sat there and I'm like, whoa. Like, I was totally making fun of who she was. I mean, her family's from San Joaquin, and I'm just sitting there just chipping away. And she knew I loved her, you know, I think she respected me, but there I was, chipping away. And after I saw this, I just pulled her aside and said, my God, I'm so sorry. You know, I've done you such a disservice. And she's, of course, oh, no, Miss Taylor, it's all good, it's all good. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, it's not. But that's why that was so powerful to me. Because it's important to see that even I would have never thought that me being funny was so hurtful. And it really is. So we've talked about this, we beat a dead horse. Implicit and explicit, I don't think any of us go into our classrooms overtly expecting to be, you know, with biases. We don't, you know, I mean, maybe I don't like bald-headed people.
Hey.
And so, I mean, that may be explicit, or Dodger fans, explicit, but.
First place.
What do you say?
First place.
I know, my team's nowhere to be found. Our exciting moment was watching Crawford retire. And implicit is the stuff we're not aware of, what our unconscious bias is, and we've talked, you know, ad nauseum about that. So, being aware of them, and I think it couldn't have been a better example than having her in here. That was like, kind of set it up, and we didn't have her stage to come in. Just so you know. So it can have damaging consequences, just like I said about that girl. And thankfully I did get to apologize to her, because they think that she committed suicide. They know she was killed, but she drove into the path of a semi, and they think it was intentional. And had I had to live with the fact that I never made peace with her, I think it would have haunted me forever. So we all have biases. Recognizing it makes us a better teacher, and we can improve our relationships with our kids, which is, I think, what Steve was getting to too, is this makes our classroom management better because it increases engagement, but it also creates a much more positive and accepting classroom climate, right? And you know, like she was mentioning how your room is very serene and calming for her to the point she wants to go to sleep. I mean, that's what you want your kids to feel. You don't want them to walk in with angst. I'm guessing, just by when she said the colors are bold and all that, and then she talks about this child that can't calm down, I'm guessing there's multiple factors in that. So the more we are aware of different things about us, the better we can be. And as long as we're constantly working towards that, we're gonna be better teachers. We don't need to see these, we talked about all these. This is interesting too, and this probably has comes into play with other teachers. When they see their peers being treated differently, that creates anxiety in some, and it can also create a door or permission for other students to treat them differently as well, right? So either the child that is like, oh my God, that's horrible, I can't believe that's happening, or jumps on the bandwagon and continues. And you had said that, you know, that child tries very hard to be included, to fit in. That kind of fits this, you know, he struggles with that. This is a good video, actually.
I want you to erase all knowledge of yourself, your race, gender, favorite food, which Real Housewives franchise you prefer. Leave all of your interests and experience at the door. Now, traditionally, school is set up assuming students can do this when they step into the classroom. Not only is it unrealistic, it's unfair. Education is the greatest human equalizer, and in a deeply divided society, education may be one of the few forms of alleviation. But if we're unintentionally offering instruction through a limited scope, we're already limiting that potential and our students. We're often so focused on compliance, we don't examine elements that are actually connected to achievement, like cultural competence. When a lesson is relevant, the student becomes a learner. Their interests are sparked and their brains ignite. And that is how we close the achievement gap. Include learners in their own learning. Groundbreaking stuff, right? As demographics shift and access to technology increases, we have to develop relevant and responsive instruction and educational technology.
Summarize that. She basically says meeting parents in the middle, like having Google Translate on your website or on your page, and I'm sure this is stuff you guys probably all do. It's new to me, but it's just making sure that we're reaching out to these parents. And I was thinking, well, prior to this, is one of the ways to let the children know that your kids, I don't know when I started saying children, I've always said kids, to let your kids know that you're okay with whatever, is if somebody says, hey, Miss T, did you know that so-and-so is from Guadalajara? And my response would be, oh, that's cool. Like, that would be my response to everything. Hey, Miss T, did you know so-and-so has two moms? Oh, that's cool. Like, a standard response. Because then I don't show any kind of, or any kind of positive either. Just the same answer. But I say it with the tone of my voice that it's cool. Like, right on. We talked about all this as well. Your homework. This is going to be interesting. So Harvard did a study about implicit bias. They have about 25 tests. Have you looked at this site ever, Steve? So they did this.
Oh wait, I think I did do that.
And they have like 25. I picked for you guys to do race and disability. And then there's a list of 4 others down at the bottom: sexuality, skin tone, transgender, religion. If you want to pick a different one, that's fine as well. I just figured it would narrow the list down for you. It'll be on the class. You don't have to report anything down. I would like you to do them. I don't want you to tell us, you don't need to tell us results or anything like that, but I would like to hear your feedback as to kind of what surprised you, what didn't surprise you, what you learned about yourself. I did ones that I would have thought for sure, I saw Steve on the way over here, I would have nailed. Like, absolutely no way I would show any bias on any of these, and I was appalled, myself. So,
is there a class code that I forgot to type in? Is there a code?
Yeah, because we haven't seen you. Yeah, yeah.
Did you have it? I'm like, did I skip this part? Last time we met.
She was on it, because you've put some stuff on,
Yeah.
yeah, because we had conversation.
Uh-oh. Tell me.
And there was a second assignment, but I'll tell you what it was, I think, if I can remember off the top of my head. Oh, there it is.
But you have to use a personal Gmail to do it.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's the same one I used for the other class.
Personal Gmail was the
Has
same.
there been, stuff that I'm supposed to be responding to already?
Yeah, but it's open,
Oh.
so you can still do it. Can you put the other page back on? I mean, we all have to see the
It's gonna be
students.
worse, I could have put a giant thing on there. I mean,
Dodgers. I'm not a Dodgers hater. I actually, Mookie Betts is one of my favorite. And then this one. And this one, we're gonna ask you to do something similar later as well, but choose 3 students that challenge your biases. Work on connecting with them throughout the semester. And without giving names, for this assignment, just share a little bit about them. You do not have to explain why you are choosing them at all. You will be asked periodically to update us on your progress. Remember that, whatever, I don't know what that's supposed to say. It is easy to, and sometimes it's tougher than we expect. I think what I'm trying to say in that, although I butchered it, is that, update us. And some days it's gonna be really easy to connect with that child, and other days not so easy. And you have to check yourself, is it because of my biases that I'm struggling with, or is it just the scenario? And keep in mind, it doesn't just mean racial or cultural, it can be, one thing you were saying when you were talking about parents, I am automatically think of parents that come out of prison as being, and this is so wrong, as being probably drug addicted, probably gangbangers, probably a minority. And what I've learned is that a lot of times they do not fit that mold. It could have been upper middle class person that got busted drug dealing, or
tax evasion.
tax evasion, Martha Stewart kind of deal.
We got a guy that's going to jail in Madera for embezzlement of $1 million from a charter school in Madera.
No way.
$1 million.
His first name's not Steve, is it?
No, Ventana is his last name. I don't remember what his first name is, but he was the executive director of Escuela Tafoya Alvarado Academy.
Oh my goodness.
Was in the Tribune, Madera Tribune, a couple of articles in there.
I hope he enjoyed it, because he's going to be spending it.
$1 million.
That's crazy.
So nobody would think that his kids, probably, because, oh, he's the executive, whatever.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you just don't know. And some of the most tatted out, scary looking people can be the kindest, the prison tats. We went to a prison, we did this, what's it called, Scared Straight? It was Scared Straight when I was a kid, I don't know what it is now. But we took a group of kids to Avenal. Yeah, and they brought us into this room, and it's a pretty small room, and the kids were lining the walls, and there was a table right here, and there was an inmate on the other side, 666, all this stuff on his head. And we know that they can't touch us, right, as teachers, but I'm standing right next to the thing, and one of the kids refused to take his shoes off, and the prisoner jumped up and slammed the table into my leg. I thought I was gonna poop in my pants right there. I was so frazzled. And so the rest of the time, I was just like, oh my God, like, if they have a shooting or whatever, or stabbing, I mean, I'm not that protected. And they went up to this one kid that I asked, I said, be my date for this. I really wanted him to go. I knew he was down the wrong path. And he had one of those tails, and we were sitting in the TV room,